Emotions. They can range from your brightest moments to your darkest hour and everything in between. Emotions help form our relationships to other people, creatures, and even places. But can you experience an emotion so strongly that it may tie you to a location, even in the afterlife? The site for a wide range of emotion, from the heated anger of a passionate argument between politicians to the fear of waging battle faced by soldiers during the Civil War to the reverence of museum goers. The old state capitol in Louisiana has a colorful history that may lend some insight to its paranormal activity. Hey y'all, my name is Olivia and welcome back to the Haunted House series. This week's state is Louisiana. Now, I know there are about 1 million haunted places in Louisiana. I mean, the French Quarter alone is packed with activity. But in an effort to look into a building that I had never heard stories about with cool architecture and fun ghost stories, I ended up choosing the old state capitol in Baton Rouge. The architecture of this is to die for, no pun intended. It is full of details. It has gorgeous stained glass, which you will see me representing here with this bright red window. Though not exactly true to the building's look, I thought it would be nice to nod to the bright colors featured in the stained glass of the building. And the ghost stories here are also really cool. So, grab your favorite fireside snack and come sit by the fiber while I tell you all about the old state capitol in Louisiana. This building's roots go back to 1845, when Louisiana lawmakers drafted and approved a new state constitution. Part of that process required them to pick a location for their new state capitol, and they chose Baton Rouge. The land for this behemoth of a building was donated by the city of Baton Rouge in 1847. The land for the old state capitol was situated on a natural levee overlooking the Mississippi River, leading locals to end up calling it the Louisiana Castle, the Castle of Baton Rouge, and the Castle on the River. James Dakin was the architect selected for the initial construction of this Capitol building, and he had a unique vision for the building centered around Gothic-style architecture. Upon acquisition of the land in 1847, official groundbreaking on the construction of the building took place in the same year, and by 1850, the legislature was able to meet for the first time in the new State House. Now, regarding a lot of old Southern buildings, there's a decent chance that they have played some sort of role leading up to or during the Civil War, and this building is no exception. In the early 1860s, legislatures met to discuss a possible secession from the United States with the understanding that a civil war was possible. On January 26, 1861, a vote was held and Louisiana opted to leave the United States and became the Sovereign and Independent Commonwealth of Louisiana, and that lasted for about 2 months before they ultimately joined the Confederacy. It wouldn't take long before the decision came back to bite them in the butt, though. In 1862, the state government was forced to leave the capital and leave Baton Rouge entirely due to the advancement of the Union troops. The capital was first moved to Opelousas and then to Shreveport. And while the government officials fled, the Union troops quickly took over the Capitol building and used it as a command post, prison, and garrison, which is just a fancy word to say that the troops also occupied the building. At some point during its occupation, the Union troops allowed a fire in the northwest turret of the Capitol building to go unchecked, which unfortunately led to the fire spreading throughout the building and gutting it, leaving only the exterior walls of the building standing. After the Civil War ended in 1866, Louisiana's state capitol was reestablished in New Orleans, leaving renovation of the former Capitol building pretty low on the list of priorities. In fact, the building remained hollow and vacant until 1879, when Louisiana's State Constitutional Convention had a change of heart and decided that Baton Rouge would in fact once again become the state's seat of government. With a $153,000 budget, which is somewhere around $4.5 million today, set aside to restore the once great building, William A. Ferré was appointed as architect to take on the job. Ferré had a lot of new ideas for the building that included adding an entire fourth floor, building a cast iron spiral staircase, adding a stained glass dome, and also the addition of exterior towers. By 1884, the work on the Capitol building was completed. Unfortunately, this building seemed to have a bit of bad luck when it came to fire, as another fire broke out in the Senate chamber in 1906, which would cause extensive damage to the east wall of the building and also water damage throughout the building as well. Once again, funds were provided to repair the building, but part of those repairs included removing the iron turrets on top of the main towers. I think it's fair to say that this building has seen quite a few notable transformations throughout its time, which is kind of fun. Oftentimes, it feels like when you look at old structures that have been standing for a long time, they are just these unchanged monoliths of history. So it's interesting to read about the many different changes that this building has had and also how those changes kind of bookmark chapters of its history as well. Alright kids, buckle up, because this is one of those buildings that has changed hands what feels like a million times. So we're going to kind of speed run this section of its history. Despite the building's many makeovers, by 1932, Governor Huey P. Long decided to build a new state capitol. However, the building wouldn't remain empty for long, this time as the Works Progress Administration of Louisiana would move into the building in 1936. Upon moving in, they too began work on extensive renovations and repairs to the building. In 1948, following the end of World War II, the building was dedicated to Louisiana's veterans, and the Veterans Organization occupied the building until the early 1990s. During this time, the old state capitol was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1973 and was designated as a National Historic Landmark in 1974. It was also placed under the Louisiana State Museum system and went under major restoration process in 1976. In 1990, the Louisiana State Legislature convened in the old state capitol for the first time in 58 years before transferring it to the office of Secretary of State. It was then closed for its most extensive restoration yet in 1991, and when it reopened in 1994, it was Louisiana's Center for Political and Governmental History. Alright, we made it. Now, like always, as much as I like delving into the history of these locations and exploring their colorful past, the most fun part of these videos are the ghost stories. So let's dive in. There are quite a few paranormal experiences that have been reported in this building. In general, people have reported hearing footsteps and doors slamming, and some have even reported being shoved by unseen entities. Security officers have reported seeing flashes of lights and shadows passing in front of cameras while viewing their monitoring systems. According to a WAFB article, security guard Tom Clark stated, quote, "I've had an experience where I was patrolling the building around 2:15 in the morning, walking across the balcony that's above the House of Representatives, and about halfway across it was like I ran into someone passing. It turned me sideways, unsettled me, and I'm pretty sure that was the last round I made that night." End quote. The same article also shares a story of a maintenance man who was clearing tables for an event and heard what sounded like footsteps on the balcony that led to an office door that slammed. The custodian ran to find security officers, but upon a sweep of the building, they were unable to locate anyone. So, who exactly may be behind these ghostly encounters? Some suspect that it was none other than Senator Pierre Couvillon, who supposedly had a heart attack during a passionate argument, causing him to pass later that day. Others suspect that it may be spirits that remained from the occupancy of the building during the Civil War. It seems that the spirits trapped in the basement create the biggest paranormal hotspot due to the area being used to house prisoners of war during the ongoing battles. The idea of Civil War soldiers also doesn't seem too far-fetched, especially when you consider how many valuable items had been buried around the old state capitol by the soldiers themselves. At the time, it wasn't uncommon to bury valuable items in the hopes of returning to retrieve them. But if a soldier had perhaps passed either in battle or as a result of battle, who would be there to retrieve their valuables? I mean, who would even know about them? Were the items worth enough to them that they might even be drawn to it in the afterlife? When you think of items like the silver sword and the 7-carat diamond ring that have been found in the lawn of the old state capitol, it doesn't seem outlandish to think that might be the case. They even found the body of an unidentified person, presumably from the Civil War era, that was unearthed from the pond on the property, according to a WGNO article. So, what do you think? Is the former senator running around the building and slamming doors loud enough to scare the employees? Are Civil War soldiers creating light effects enough to throw off the security guards? Would you visit the old Louisiana State Capitol? I have to say, it is a truly gorgeous building. I think it is pretty clear why I picked this particular building to stitch. And as much as my hands cursed me for all of the tiny details I packed into the piece, it was definitely worth it because this was a building I couldn't pass up stitching. Thank you for watching today. Of course, let me know if you have ever been to the old state capitol building and if you have ever experienced any of its spooky happenings. I will include all research and image links down below. Thanks for sticking around, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to the page. Also, please recommend my channel to any of your other spooky and crafty friends. It would help out so much. I will also link my socials and Etsy store down below. See ya!